Thank you for your interest in learning about culturally sensitive treatment modalities for urban youth with post-traumatic stress disorder. My name is JoLeah Gorman, and I'm an online student at Morgan State University in the Graduate School of Social Work. My concentration in my social work graduate program has been urban youth, children, and families. The more I study and interact with urban youth, children, and families, the more I see the effects of interpersonal, systemic, and generational trauma. The prevention of and healing from trauma are the areas of social work that I have chosen to focus on in my career. Urban youth in particular are at risk for experiencing trauma. Trauma, which is a deeply frightening event that happens directly to someone or that is witnessed happening to someone else, can happen anywhere and in any relationship, according to Gilgan et al. Judith L. Rosie Battle reports in her book, African American Adolescents in the Urban Community, that too many African American children are suffering from the effects of witnessing violence in their neighborhood, which can lead to PTSD, which can then lead to youth that are not as healthy as they could be and who may begin to repeat the patterns they have grown up with. Urban youth are also experiencing PTSD symptoms in concerning numbers, in large part due to the traumatic events they experience or witness. PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is a mental health diagnosis that happens after a traumatic event is experienced or witnessed and is characterized by flashbacks, nightmares, hypervigilance, isolation, and struggles in trusting others that can have a debilitating effect. Reported in Kimtope et al., in the U.S., more than 1 in 4 children experiences a significant traumatic event before adulthood. Of youth receiving mental health services in the U.S., 13 to 28% have diagnosable PTSD. As profiled by CNN reporter Jen Christensen, studies by Emory psychiatry professor Dr. Carrie Ressler found that in certain urban pockets, including Atlanta, Chicago, and D.C., rates of PTSD among urban youth were higher than among war veterans. She called the frequency of PTSD symptoms among urban youth in these cities a pandemic. To add to the problem, urban youth who live and go to school in low-income areas in the U.S. have less access to holistic healing services, according to the American Psychological Association. This can negatively affect a youth's ability to succeed in school, form healthy relationships, and pursue their goals. Thus, the problem covered in this digital essay is the large number of urban youth who are experiencing PTSD or PTSD symptoms who have limited access to culturally sensitive treatment. An urban youth who is experiencing PTSD because of a traumatic event would benefit from treatment modalities that are culturally sensitive, client-centered, and relevant, as according to McWhorter, and McWhorter. Long-term goals that could be helpful for a one-on-one therapeutic relationship with an urban youth include the following. Number 1, identify at least 5 trauma triggers that intensify symptoms of PTSD. Number 2, learn and practice at least 3 new coping skills that can be used during a trauma trigger. Number 3, learn and practice at least 3 new coping skills that assist the youth in re-establishing control of themselves. This is especially important as urban youth are frequently disempowered by systems and authority figures. Number 4, identify at least 5 personal and 5 familial or community strengths in order to increase the chance of long-term success over PTSD and its symptoms, as reported by Okundaye. Short-term goals and objectives correspond with each long-term goal and will help the client feel successful and be able to reach their larger goals. The short-term goals or objectives are as follows. Within the first long-term goal, the short-term goals are: youth and social worker will name the symptoms of PTSD that the youth experiences most often. These could include anxiety, hypervigilance, nightmares, flashbacks, isolation, and others. With each symptom, youth and social worker identify trauma triggers, the situations, places, people, sound, smells, or words that procure the symptoms. Youth and social worker identify themes amongst the trauma triggers, which serve to empower the youth with information and self-knowledge. Within the second long-term goal, the short-term goals are: Youth and social worker identify themes amongst the trauma triggers and notice the surroundings where the youth is triggered. Are they alone, in a group, at school, on the street, etc.? Using relevant and culturally sensitive knowledge, youth and social worker name coping skills that the youth could use, including listening to music, exercising, playing a video game, writing a rap, drawing, or sleeping. Youth and social worker will match trauma triggers with a coping skill that is realistic and useful for the youth to use. For example, if a youth is triggered at school, they can't leave the room to go exercise, but they could draw. Youth and social worker will role play or practice the coping skill with the youth to empower them with the knowledge that they know what to do if triggered. Youth's teachers and supports will be notified of the coping skill plans. Within the third long-term goal, the short-term goals are: using relevant and culturally sensitive knowledge, youth and social worker name coping skills that the youth could use, including mantras, hip-hop, sports, and positive affirmations. Youth and social worker role play or practice the coping skill with the youth to empower them with the knowledge that they know what to do if triggered. And finally, within the fourth long-term goal, the short-term goals are: youth will name at least 5 personal strengths the youth has, including all parts of their humanity, like their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual strengths. Youth and social worker create a plan for how the youth can use these strengths to support their long-term success. Youth and social worker create an eco-map and or a genogram with the youth in order to identify the strengths in their community. Youth will identify at least 5 parts of the youth's community that the youth feels comfortable having a part of their treatment. Youth will create a plan for how the youth will include them in their treatment over the long term and communicate it to those included. Interventions are the ways the social worker will assist the client in achieving their short-term goals. The interventions for this youth are as follows: psychoeducation and narrative therapy, cognitive therapy, psychoeducation and narrative therapy, behavioral therapy, in vivo treatment and cognitive therapy, strengths-based therapy, cognitive therapy, in vivo treatment and cognitive therapy, strengths-based therapy, behavioral therapy, family-oriented, strengths-based, and systems therapies, family-oriented and systems theory, and family-oriented and systems theory. Following this treatment plan model, you as a social worker will be more prepared to facilitate culturally sensitive and more effective interventions with an urban youth who is experiencing PTSD. Here are my references. Thank you for listening.